Hello. So I said last week that we were glad to watch that one fade into our rearview mirror. Well, to extend that metaphor, we're accelerating away from Game Week 7 at top speed as we head into the international break, perhaps breathing a sigh of relief after the disaster many had just now. We can't wait to look ahead, which is the main crux of today's podcast. Hooray, before we kind of slope off for a little while, just have a little breather, as I mentioned. We are Who Got the Assist? I'm Tom. You can find me on Twitter at WGTA_FPL. My co host is Anthony at FPL Stag. Our league code is 2IP43T. And we're also on video. It'll never replace the audio, but just so you know it's there in case you want to watch us unedited, search us on YouTube to find us. And we're very excited today. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see one hell of a beard to be joined by the living legend that is Abdul Rekman, aka FPL Salah tonight. You're right, mate. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me on. Been a long time listener. So yeah, I was glad to finally get the call up.
Absolute pleasure to have you on. And of course, given that this pod is pretty simple, we're going to be responding to the rain of wildcards that are being dropped. And Abdul, you're an important component of that, given that Tom and I have pulled the trigger long ago. So you're our wildcarder in chief here for this particular episode, which is great to have. So yeah, we're going to be obviously keying into that particular question and dealing with who our top transfer targets would be if we were on a wildcard, or if we're on a wildcard in Abdul's case. And we're also going to look into the correspondence section. We have one question there, but we're actually short on correspondence, folks. So who got the assist at gmail.com. Your correspondence will potentially be in the next episode, not next week, but in 2 weeks' time, because we are short on correspondence at the moment. So we'd appreciate that. And towards the end of this podcast, we will have the listeners' questions as per usual. However, we are going to start off with the game week reviews from one of the most interesting and frustrating game weeks that has ever been.
Yeah, and we'll start off with Abdul. You're the guest. You're the top scorer this week, and your season's going pretty well, isn't it? Before we get into your game week.
Yeah, I'm ranked at it's about 60k now. So I've had another good start. I had a good start last season as well. Had an even better start this season. It was a weird game week, this one, because it started off with Ronaldo getting benched. I just thought that's it. Red arrow confirmed, but Son and double Brighton defence kind of pulled me through. So yeah, I got 52 points. Do you want me to go through the team, or?
I mean, you can just talk about just the key bits, which
So obviously, I had 2 free transfers, and I bought in Son and Rudiger, and obviously, Son 10-pointer, and then double Brighton defence. Obviously, was expecting the Chelsea clean sheet, but I didn't get it. But can't complain with that score this week.
It's funny because looking at your team, it could have been even more. You've White on the bench and you've Livramento on the bench as well. It's funny. It's like very few people have come out of this game week with a case of what might have been in the case of their bench, perhaps. But yeah, you really accumulated a good score there. I guess if we flick on to my team, which would be the next one, you kind of see that I was short in points all over the place and ended up with 44. In fairness, I did end up benching Livramento, and he would have certainly been a helpful addition to get me an extra 2 points in my side. I had 2 free transfers, something that was discussed in the last podcast. In the end, what I opted to do was sell Jota and bring in Saka, 3 points, and to sell Soufal, who didn't have a particularly good game. So at least bringing in Rudiger for 2 points wasn't a particularly bad result. Now, there's 2 cases of what might have been here. With Rudiger, I did strongly consider Azpilicueta, actually having been quite strongly convinced by Tom on the last podcast, but I just couldn't. I couldn't justify spending that extra 0.3 because I reckoned it was going to cost me further down the line with transfer planning when I do eventually, quite soon, I suspect, move away from the Threemium. So I was being careful on that, and so I went for Rudiger. But the argument here is that why didn't I go for someone cheaper than Saka then? I could have saved an awful lot more money then, and who would have been the temptation but Tom's man Mbeumo? And I missed, there's 2 strong cases of what might have been there. In fairness, I could easily have just as well have gone for some of the other 5.5s who've been doing quite well. Could easily have been Townsend. It could have been one of the other ones too. But in the end, I went for Saka. He had good fixtures coming up, and I always like him. He tends to have good underlying data. Arsenal's data
very lively as well, isn't he?
He is. Arsenal's data isn't particularly consistently good, but I just like Saka, and if you look on the eye test alone, he's just so involved, as you say. I was tempted by him. I had the Ronaldo captaincy. I didn't happen to be awake actually at the deadline on Saturday, so I missed the whole entire furore with 10-15 minutes to the deadline. So I ended up captaining him. That didn't work out, of course, but in the end, because Lukaku blanked as well, it wasn't something that hurt. Salah 13, White's 7, and Sanchez's 6, kind of basically making up the most of my 44. Otherwise, pretty disappointing, but still a green arrow, a very small one. So about 50k up, so 720k or so now.
Oh, cool. Well done. So Abdul 51 points, Anthony 44, and I am 47, but a -4. So a tiny red for me. I think I was 10k red, something like that. I was just 1 point off my safety score. The big success this week was contrasting fortunes of Anthony. So I had 2 free transfers, and I removed Shaw and Jota for 3 points, and I brought in Azpilicueta and Mbeumo for 18 points. So a 15-point plus swing, which is very pleasing. The annoying thing is that those were pretty much the only returners in my team, apart from Mo Salah, who everybody else owns. And the last minute Wissa goal for Brentford lost me 1 bonus for Mbeumo, which pretty much cost me a little green arrow, which again, one of those little things. There's fine margins, I guess, in the game week. But I've been banging on about Dave, Azpilicueta and Mbeumo for the last few pods, so I'm pretty pleased with the outcome there. It's always nice when the two things sort of align, you know. Oh yeah, I fancy this guy is one thing, but actually kind of words, translating words into actions is another, and I'm glad that kind of all happened. So I was planning on leaving it at that. You know, I have Ronaldo captain like these guys, but I actually took a last minute -4 to bring in Lukaku, which is very uncharacteristic of me. I did it at 10:58 a.m. on Saturday morning. Unlike Anthony, I was awake for it all. The context was basically is that I fancied it all week. And last pod I was saying, you know, I've got the risk appetite to do it, yada, yada, yada. And on Saturday morning, unlike Anthony, I was awake. I was on Twitter. I know I shouldn't be. And I was basically on the lookout for news about Ronaldo. And a couple of United sources from Blue Ticks basically were implying that someone was benched. And I basically used that to feed my bias and take a hit on Ron. So I was saying on Friday night, nah, it's not 50-50 anymore. I'm fine. No, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make the hit because I don't have to, because it doesn't fall in line with my objectives. But on Saturday morning, it did suddenly fall in line with objectives. So I thought, yeah, you know what? It's 50-50. So I'm going to take the hit and get Ron in. Obviously, I was feeling very, very glad after Ronaldo was benched, got 1 pointer. Afterwards, I, was kind of like, oh, I've got all the hope in the world. But then Kaku, the biggest underperformer this week in terms of XGI, hopefully a sign good things are coming, but unfortunately didn't quite come this week. Oh, that miss that Chilwell eventually scored still, it's giving me nightmares last 3 nights. But I guess I bought a transfer for the cost of 2 points effectively, because I was going to bring him in game week 9 anyway. So meh, whatever. 10k drop, I'll take that. It was an okay week, but it's always a bit of a strange one when your transfers in have defined how well your week is done, but the players who are left in your team haven't been able to do things. And things like having Guaita over Sanchez, for example, little things like that haven't really worked out for me. I had 10 men as well, by the way, because I had Christensen and I had Williams. Neither of them played, so I only had 2 defenders. Really annoying. Right.
Still, like, fair play with those transfers because they really did work out. They're the envy. They're the envy of me for sure this week, because that was a pretty big green arrow for me if I'd decided to move that way instead of the way I did. And I know I woulda, coulda, shoulda as an easy thing to get into, but that was very much on the table.
Yeah, shame about the rest of the day. Right, objectives time. Anthony, how'd you do this week?
Fine. I did indeed captain with the herd / algos. Ronaldo was right up there on when I was looking. I think if I remember correctly, or if I was told correctly afterwards, I think Lukaku might have ended up being the top.
Yeah,
of
he did
the
by
old
0.05.
Yeah. But Ronaldo was top of it before that, so I'm not criticizing myself for that one. Didn't work out, obviously, but didn't work out for the Lukaku folks either, even though they were very, very unlucky. And I was thanking my lucky stars on that particular one. Don't be afraid to transfer out elite players if they've dropped off. Arguably, I might be getting to that point now, but up to now, I didn't feel like I was at that. Don't make transfers late on a Friday night or a Saturday morning. I certainly didn't make them on a Saturday morning because I was still asleep. And on Friday, I made them around 10 o'clock at night, but I even texted into the Slack chat to Tom to expressly say, this is not a late transfer. It has been considered. I'm not out. I'm not at anything. This is just thought through. So I did not break that. And playstyle max 10 hits total. I still haven't taken a hit this year. Somehow I haven't taken a hit. So yeah, that's me.
Fair play. So on target for me, similarly on target. In fact, I've managed to put a green tick after one of my objectives as well. So captaincy, I did captain Lukaku in the end. I was going to leave it on Ronaldo and just kind of present this as a a -4. I didn't want to take if I'd have left it that way, but no, I did bring in Lukaku, who was top of the list. So fair play to me. Transfers and 50th situation, take a hit. I did. So yeah, big tick for me. Third one, take a chance on form by bandwagoning players wherever possible. Well, I've kind of gone the other way with my transfers this week, and I've kind of bought ahead of the curve with Aspilicueta and Wemore, hopefully. But that one hasn't quite been addressed yet. But yeah, no, broadly, it feels like neither of us have managed to quite yet break either of our objectives, which is good. We're on for a raise at the end of this calendar year. And Abdul, I mean, we've been doing these objectives all season to try to keep us, as you've probably heard, in some sort of sense of, responsibility. What's what I'm looking for? Some sense of accountability to ourselves at the start of the season, how we mean to go on. And broadly, we've been checking in every week on this. I mean, do you have any kind of objectives you set yourself this season, or just in general? Because obviously you've got a great record. How do you kind of formulate how you're going to approach seasons?
I mean, generally, I always kind of aim for a top 1K, but I mean, I know it's highly unlikely that I'm going to get it, but I have that kind of objective there, and I just think that, I mean, the way I kind of start the season is like, you probably heard this before, like loads of times, that I try not to take many risks, especially at the start of the season when it comes to captains, picking like the obvious picks and not kind of differentiate on that, and just really kind of going with the herd, and then leaving the rest until later on. And I think that's my kind of objective. That's been my actual kind of objective, over the past 3 or 4 seasons, and it's worked out quite well for me. But I think my main one would be, again, this is just something I've probably started in the last 3 or 4 seasons, is like really being patient with my transfers, and not kind of knee jerking and price changing. And I think that's probably the single factor that's really helped me kind of improve me as an FPL manager, you could say.
I remember like last year, especially, and I guess you kind of repeated it this year. Like last year, you resisted so many of the kind of early bandwagons, didn't you? Like Werner, especially, was one that you were just like, no, I need to see some sort of sense of proof of concept, effectively. And I think that stood you in such good stead, didn't it? Like last year, I remember just looking at your rank and thinking, wow, how's he done it? Oh, he's just trusted established players. Like, so deceptively simple, isn't it? One of those things that can perhaps be overlooked by managers.
Yeah, no, for sure, definitely. I just think it's one of those things that we tend to overthink. And I mean, just as a prime example, this season, like Jamie Vardy, you know what I mean? He's a proven asset. He's been banging goals for 6 seasons, but he's still kind of going under the radar. But I think obviously there's a few other kind of factors behind that as well. But just as a kind of general example, I think I try not to overthink decisions as well. Which has helped, and just trying to kind of stay in my own little bubble, if you could say, because with Twitter especially getting so big now, it's just the ideas and opinions are flying about all over the place. So yeah,
it's interesting. Do you have any means of going about keeping yourself in that bubble? I guess that's something we would have discussed quite a lot in our summer specials, especially in the psychology, behavioral science ones. And it's interesting. Do you have any particular tactic in that, or do you take notes at the start of the week and work at the end of the week? Or
no, I mean, to be fair, I've got a few Twitter groups, like a few kind of select people that I speak to about my team. So it's just kind of I think what another thing that's really important is actually discussing your team and tactics with other kind of managers. I think that's one of the things that really kind of improves your game. So it's not like I'm just sitting there by myself, with a pen and paper. I've got other kind of people that I speak to and bounce ideas off. But I'm talking about keeping that circle small.
Yep.
Because when you keep that circle small, you kind of keep keep a straight head, and you're not just inundated with 10 different ideas and
Yeah. No, I feel that. We try to do that in a couple of our messaging groups, Anthony, but it doesn't always go well, does it?
It never does.
No, it doesn't. Right, let's move on swiftly from that point before we start pointing fingers at who made me buy Kennedy a couple of years ago. To the Min League update. The code is 2IP43T, and there's a new leader this week. So Ryan is dead. Long live the Ryan. Yes, it's Ryan Mackey who's gone to the top this week with Ryanges, a 52-pointer, enough to take him there from second right up to first. He's deposed Ryan Quinn, who we'll come on to shortly. But Josue Creed has come between the two Ryans as well. Sharknado FC, 61 points this week. A nice little pick. He moved out James for Aspilicueta. So a nice immediate boon there. The 61 pointer got him above Ryan Quinn as well into second. And he's now just, he's 11 points behind Ryan Mackey in first. Unfortunately, Ryan Quinn, our erstwhile leader, has had a bit of a shocker. 35 points only on a -8 as well. Not good. So he sold Williams for cash, Jota for Rafinha, and Shaw for Alonso, unfortunately. So a -8, which didn't pay off really at all, sadly. And poor old Ryan is now down to third. In fourth, it's a new entrant to the league. Is Andreas Josephson, a Zinka squad. That reminds me, I probably need to close the league pretty soon. But he captained Jimenez this week. I brought in Kieran Tierney and brought in Aspilicueta as well. Must be listening to WGTA. They're in the mini league, so it makes sense. 61 points for him. He pushes George Papilis down to fifth. Sad at FPL Fallen. It took him on as 4 this week. Brought in Lukaku, brought in Alexander on, brought in Click, sorry. Maverick move, brought in Click, and brought in Christensen. Obviously, those didn't really pay off either, so 49. Sixth up from 7th for Akatak with 47. I mean, these are the sort of numbers you needed this week to move. Really, really not a good week at all. Daniel Arkoff, Akatak, Ronaldo captain. 47 points, but still enough to give him a green arrow. A Kowati kid, Gavin Smith, a red arrow down from 5th to 7th and 7th, 44 points this week. Joint 8th, it's Osamayumi Ogbomo. With 52 points, -4. Antonio captain. Brought Aspilicueta again, and brought in Saka too. And wow, some people actually do listen to us by the sound of it, Anthony. That's really that's quite heartening, actually. And joint 8th, it's John Lee as well. He also, well, no, he didn't. He brought in Alonso and Rudiger, so 39 points there, down from 3rd to 8th. And in joint 10th, we've got 4 people actually. Andreas Johansson, Charles Woods, Maxim Malinovsky, and Josh M. Josh M's featured in these updates before, with a varying array of scores between them. Andreas, in particular, 61 points in his wildcard. So congratulations to everybody in the top 10, doing very, very well, motoring along pretty well this year. And finally, in this section, I don't know why I went New Zealand there. Finally, in this section, we're going to talk about the market forces. It's where we look at the movers and shakers of the game week just gone, see how the market's performing. And Anthony, even though it is an international break, wild cards are flying everywhere. Lots of this data is probably slightly diluted by that fact. There's a really surprising name I didn't expect I'd see top of market forces in terms of transfers in. You're also on mute.
Yes, Tom, I don't think I ever would have expected to see the day where Andros Townsend was the most transferred in player in FPL, but that's where we are right now. So about 190k transfers in now for Townsend, which is surprising. And to be honest, even though it is Cancelo, for Townsend to be followed by a defender as the most transferred in players in a given game week is shocking, followed by a Wolves forward that isn't Raul Jimenez in Huang. So it's really a funny selection in the top 3. They're followed by Salah and then Doucouré, who has about 100k transfers in. So, a real smattering there in terms of the positions that we've got all 3 positions being dealt with there outfield. And funding those in terms of transfers out, it's Cristiano Ronaldo is the most transferred out player, 150k transfers out. TAA follows him up with about 120k-ish transfers out. Mason Greenwood follows them, just under 100k transfers out. Marcos Alonso being sold suddenly now that he isn't undroppable. So, 76, 80k transfers out. And then you've kind of got this interesting smattering, like a quartet who are around 65k in sales right now. Luke Shaw, Ferran Torres, Ismail Assar, and Romelu Lukaku. So really, it's quite interesting to see, 2 premiums there in the most transferred out. And yet in terms of the transferred in, aside from Salah, you're kind of looking at an awful lot of the players in that bracket of between, let's say, 5.5 and 6.5.
All
I guess
the
those,
enablers.
yes, all of the enablers and the more than we would have expected, I guess, probably going to be the subjects that we'll be dealing with an awful lot in the rest of this podcast when we're talking about wildcard teams. And so not too surprising that these are the types of players that are being brought in when so many wildcards are being hit this week.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely is one of those things, and we'll come on to it in just a bit, where a lot of these players were priced sort of in a hedged way before the season began. And I think definitely that's all coming home to roost now. In terms of transfers out, Ronaldo is bearing the brunt of a lot of those transfers. And wow, if people have done Ronaldo to Juan, I guess these are still people who are not Salah owners, maybe. I mean, that's crazy. I wanted to ask Abdul really about Trent. I think maybe we'll come on to it in a little bit as well. But 115,000 people have sold Trent this week, and maybe some wild cards there as well. I mean, are you surprised that there's that many people bailing on Trent? Because I saw that and I thought, well, that's probably about right actually, because I can imagine a lot of people kind of thinking, well, you know, Cancelo or whatever is okay going forward, but Trent's just one of those players that you probably want more news on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm surprised, because I mean, with him being kind of red flagged and not playing, people are just kind of knee jerk, and they're probably taking him out on Wildcard as well, and you know, maybe with a view to kind of bringing him, you know, back in. But yeah, I think even in general, I mean, yeah, with the kind of double City and kind of double Chelsea defense looking, you know, quite popular, it seems that he possibly could be disposable now, and I just think that, you know, there's people that just kind of finding room for him really. But I don't know. I mean, I think personally, if Trent is fit for game week 8, it'd be really difficult for me to leave him out. As you said, he's one of those players where, you know, he's a glue pick, isn't he? You just pick him and leave him there, and
yeah,
you know, his points will tick along. So yeah, it's a really risky strategy to go without him. But I can see. I mean, being on a wild card myself, I could see the kind of the attraction in it. Because he just, you know, opens up so many options, and you know, makes your kind of team, you know, better.
Yeah,
so much.
It's basically selling a premium, isn't it? And just being like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm awash with cash now. Anthony, Man United players, the exodus kind of extends from there, doesn't it?
It does. I can totally understand why people are selling Man United players. I think it's something we talked about in last week's pod, even, that it's just like Ronaldo is turning this United team into something like Juventus of last year, where the whole entire system is made to operate around him. It was interesting to see that for at least a small period, United looked a little bit better without him in the side before kind of lapsing into their usual kind of malaise that tends to overtake them when they're not losing, basically. And so yeah, it's not surprising to see so many United players being sold as much as they are. To see TAA in there amongst the most transferred out, just maybe to follow on to what you guys were talking about, I find it interesting people are selling him now, just when, you know, he'll probably be back in the next game week. But I'm not sure if it's a good idea. Having sold him in my own wildcard and felt seriously burned by it without actually really suffering really badly in terms of points. With a game like Watford up next, he poses such a goal threat. He is an even bigger assist threat, if that's the right word to use. And then obviously there's that, you know, decent Liverpool clean sheet potential always, especially against a team like Watford, even under new management. They're under new management every week anyway.
Yeah.
Feels like. So with that in mind, yeah, I'm not sure if this is the time to be selling him at this point. And just, it does seem like big at the back is, at least in theory, strong again. And so I'm not convinced by that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've also, the only kind of final note I've got here is that 62,000 people have sold Lukaku this week. One of those very classic reactions to what's going on. All right, let's take a break there and we'll move on to the main topic just after this. All right, so we're back and we're on to the main topic. So, you know, normally on WGTA, we try to provide you with a fishing rod rather than a fish. Well, this week we thought that with the abundance of managers wildcarding it or facing some, you know, transition-based transfers, like we said last week, it's all about that fixture shift and it's in full swing now. Plus that kind of momentum, harking back to that we built up recently, talking about things like the premiums, the defense, the freemium. It was best this week to just kind of strip it back for once, and focusing on the core issue, which is a fairly straightforward: who are our top transfer targets? Obviously, this is designed to help wildcarders. Abdul has helped them as wildcards. It's like we planned it for this or something like that. And wildcarders alike to think about either the revolution, if you're a wildcard, or evolution of their teams, if you're not. We'll answer this question not by reviewing the whole player list. We don't want to get into price review territory in preseason, but I guess by looking through each position by price tier. So premiums for top price, support for mid price, and enablers. We're going to do that and discuss, I think, simply our top target for each within the array of different options floating around there. It might be the same option, of course, we come up with, and obviously we may not speak about your player, your niche pick, etc., etc. Sorry about that. Time, things like that. Worth mentioning the timestamp here. It's Monday, the 4th of October, 2021. The Game Week 7 has just finished, so if this is this next week and something has changed, basically, we're hoping it's not instantly dated. But first, Abdul on Wildcard, worth just kind of going over that at the moment because a lot of people will be interested in seeing where you've gone. Your team's up on the screen for those who are watching on YouTube. But for those who aren't, would you mind just talking us through where you've gone thus far? Obviously, we know it's kind of first pass and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So at the moment, this is obviously it. This is my draft, assuming at the moment Trent is not fit for Watford. So I've got Ramsdale in goal, and then Steele as my 4 million backup, but that'll probably be Foster or another 4 million. I already looked into that position. Yeah. So the three main defenders, I've got Cancelo, Diaz, Rudiger, and then I've got Livramento and Tomiyasu. In midfield, I've got Salah, Son, Rafinha, Mbeumo, and Bissouma as my bench enabler, and then I've got Lukaku, Antonio, and Tony. That's the team I'm on at the moment. Of course, that probably will change quite a bit if Trent is fit for Watford. My plan is, if he's not fit for Watford, then maybe bringing him in for game week 10 or something, or maybe even doing that anyway. But yeah, this is where I'm at the moment.
You've got a decent. If Watford doesn't happen, then you've got a good reason to not have him in for United, and you can obviously, after a wild card, you tend to want to roll your free transfer afterwards. So you'll have two free transfers. Game week 10 makes a lot of sense, and the likes of Son in there maybe would be a climb down. And no, I really like this. And I think that it's interesting because it keys into a good pivot question, looking at your midfield in particular, which is, Son is obviously kind of a slight luxury pick because of no Trent. But after Son and Salah, you've then got Rafinha and Mbeumo, and then you've got Bissouma and the 4.5 slot, which will speak about just a bit. But there was a really good pivot question we were asked by FPL Sheppy, who said he's also on World Cup and struggling to build midfield. He says, are there any real options above 7 million except Salah? Or is it Salah and cheapies with the money spent in defence and forward? So you've gone, Abdul, with Salah, Son, and preserving that free man up front. But I think it'd be really interesting from the off, thinking about who our transfer targets are, to start with the midfield, start in the middle, because at the moment, there's lots of really interesting sort of dynamics going on. I guess to start in the premiums, Salah, I think, and obviously your account's named after an Abdul. I think we were going to leave Salah as it is because we don't need to wax lyrical about him anymore. But I'm interested to hear about your Son pick there, because I noted, for example, he's third for goal involvements overall this season, level with Andros Townsend. And he's also 7th for XG. But I think he's one who, because of the prices, we've got questions about this, but I think they're going to end up in here. So I'm just going to mention it now. Magic of Ryan M mentioned Son and asked whether he was one of those kind of template busters we were all looking for, and I think that that's probably a good place to start here, because outside of Salah, Abdul, it seems like you put the money aside for Son. Is that just because the Trent situation, or regardless of that, would you have Son in there?
Yeah, it's, at the moment it's because of the Trent situation. I bought him in this week anyway. I was like my kind of a possible, a 1 week or a possible 2 week plan, because I was planning on doing my wild card this week or the week after. But yeah, he's there because of no Trent. I mean, it's basically between one of them two. I've not at the moment been able to kind of put together a kind of balanced team with them both in it. Without losing. I mean, I've put one draft together, but that kind of involves losing Tony, which and also one of the City defenders. So it's tough, but I just really like Son as an option. He's got Newcastle next, which is a great fixture. And then if you look on the FPL website, his next 3 fixtures after that, 9, 10, 11 are all red and ranked at 4. But really, I don't think they're that bad of fixtures for Son. West Ham away, Man United at home, and then Everton away, and then after that, their fixtures pick up hugely. So he's really attracted me. But I don't know. I just think if Trent is fit, I just won't be able to justify it, which is a real shame because I love the guy as a player anyway. But
yeah,
with an FPL asset, he's a great FPL asset, but it's just a really awkward price point. And so that's kind of where my head's at the moment with Son. I'm kind of secretly hoping that Trent is ruled out for maybe another game week or two. Gets to be rest, so I can put him in. But I mean another kind of thing about Trent as well is that if you look at Liverpool's fixtures, they've got Man United away in 9, and they've got Brighton at home, which is, I guess, it's a good fixture, but then they've got West Ham away. So I mean, I think we can possibly go without Trent until game week 13 when they've got Southampton at home and then their fixtures pick up. Possibly. So So I mean, that's kind of where my head's at the moment. Just kind of oohing and ahhing between Trent and Son, really.
This isn't an FPL podcast worthy point to make, but I was astounded to see that Son had crossed the 42 points barrier and was, the second highest scoring premium midfielder now. He seems to have ghosted to that position as far as I'm concerned. Like, he's had plenty of goal involvements. It's just because I guess Tottenham kept winning games 1-0, then they started losing games constantly, and then they had last weekend. So it's been a kind of an interesting season for them in that sense that Son's points seem to have just kind of like quietly ticked up. And obviously 2 assists in the last game week, giving him a double figure haul, 10 points, has kind of brought him right up there in and amongst the esteemed names like the Duke and Andros Townsend. But it is really interesting. He's just been such a quiet option. There were a few people on Twitter posting teams, and I saw Son starting to appear ahead of the last week. And I was thinking, wow, I thought it was a brave pick at the time. But it's kind of suddenly now, okay, you look at the data and you see that his expected FPL points, he's overperforming it relatively substantially by about a third, and that he would have been expected to get about 31 points from his XG of 2.12 and his XA of 0.34, and he's obviously got the 42 points. But at the same time, that is Son in a nutshell, isn't it? And I guess he and you would expect him to start the assists that he got, they kind of came from unexpected sources. Would be kind of one way to put it. And so it is kind of interesting that if Kane started to return, because Kane's price is relatively prohibitive and because he's contesting with some of the other well-known premium options in the forward line, it means that Son and his assists that he could get for Kane would be a particularly good value add to a team for relatively cheap. He is, we kind of discussed in pricing pods in preseason. I don't want to go back over those particular discussions, but at 10 million, he is a premium in disguise, as proven last season with his 200 club entrance. And he could do it again if things kind of come together for just one other Spurs attacking player for him to provide and work with.
Yeah, I think that his fortunes are linked with Trent's in the mind of wildcards like Abdul is definitely key. Like, for me to make that, I need to end up moving Trent out to a mid-price at best defender to make it work. So it could be one of those on wildcard Abdul where wildcards could see a huge kind of uplift because people like us who don't have a wildcard could be sat here, with Trent hoping that he's fit, and then when they come back for United, whereas you've already got Son for an okay looking fixture, to be honest, next up against West Ham, as you said. So, I mean, I really like that, and I think that's a nice differential, provided Trent isn't fit. If he is fit, I think we'll come on to defense in a little bit, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But I guess kind of to move the story on a little bit, I'm guessing that we'd all kind of nominate Salah as being the premium, obviously. We'll come on to maybe Kevin De Bruyne later on. I'm not going to go into that here. But I think the story of the season so far has been of those lower price support players beating out a lot of the premium picks, as well as beating out a lot of the mid-price midfield picks over the course of the first 7 game weeks. So, I mean, if you look at points scored for players below 10.0, you have the following top 5. You've got Doucouré and Townsend on 43. Those players have both scored more points than Son. And they cost just over half his price, which is just pretty crazy, to be honest. I mean, you've got Benrahma first, Doucouré, Townsend, Sarr, Gray, and then you've got Conor Gallagher down on 34. And you've got to head down a fair way before you look at a few players. So after Sarr, you've got kind of Pogba on 36. Sorry, after Gray, you've got Pogba on 36 as well, and Greenwood on 36 too. And I said at the start of the season, many players in this bracket have been hedged in the pricing. There's definitely a volatility in this particular market. And there's also a case of the hype, I think, because, Townsend and Doucouré in particular have done what Jack Harrison did last year and kind of sneaked their way to decent scores without much acclaim versus the likes of Benrahma and Sarr, who are much acclaimed, and that's been kind of proved in the jump in price and jump in ownership they've got. Gray as well falls into that character. Overperformance is massive here, no matter which tool you use. So according to Scout, Townsend's outperformed his XGI by 2.25 for his 5 involvements, and Doucouré has outperformed his by a man 4.5 on his 6 involvements. Like, sustainable, I'm not sure. In terms of the underperformers, the 2 Wolves lads, shockingly, are the biggest underperformers. 0 involvements, but over 2 expected for Trincao and Traore. And then Buemo, 1.75 light, and that kind of tallies as well if you've watched him play. But you have to go quite a fair way down. But you start looking at the likes of Gundogan, Mount, Grealish, Pepe, and Diogo Jota, an XGI of 3.99. Expected actual goals are actually 3. If he had a couple more goals, for example, or if Mane had managed to register those goals for his assist, he'd be right up there, wouldn't he? I mean, there's definitely a few options floating around of likes of Grealish, for example. He's top for Pembot's touches amongst these midfielders. He's had the most attempted assists. Great trio of fixtures incoming for Burnley, Brighton, and Crystal Palace. But I mean, Abdul, at the moment, you've gone for just kind of having that kind of lower reaches, 5.x to 6.x support costs. I mean, is it the case that it's all about supporting that big defense and that kind of slightly bigger attack than normal?
Yeah, I think so. I think I mean, there's so much good value in those price points now. With Rafinha, and Mbeumo, and then you've got the other options that you've mentioned as well. I mean, there's a few other guys that are performing like Gallagher and the Everton boys, as you just mentioned. So yeah, I mean, but at the same time, it's just really it's so difficult to kind of trust, the kind of mid-priced, the lower kind of mid-priced midfielders. So yeah, I think it's just, I think you're nailed kind of picks in midfield are Salah and Rafinha, and then after that, it's I think that's where it gets really tough, and I think that's where you kind of need to do the bulk of your analysis and who the best midfielders are. And I think one guy you missed out was Phil Foden, who is could potentially be a great option as well. I mean, he's one I'm looking at. If I end up going Trent, and I have to get rid of Son, then he's probably one that I'm really likely looking at for City. He's only 7.9. Again, it's just the rotation with him. But yeah, I mean, from what I've been hearing from when people have been talking about him, he seems to be one of kind of Pep's favourite players, and he should play. But yeah, I think when you're looking at the mid-price midfielders, I mean, there's just so many, and I think, I mean, I've gone with Mbeumo because I think he's definitely the best one. He's the best one after Rafinha, the mid-priced one. If you look at the stats, he's playing out of position, and I think the ones that other guys that you mentioned, like Townsend, Traore, Gallagher, I think these guys will probably, I mean, I think there are tons at the moment have been variants, and I think
it's not sustainable.
Yeah, I don't think they'll sustain that rate or even anywhere close to it. Whereas I think Mbeumo is just kind of actually going to improve.
It's interesting on Embuemo. It's like it's I don't want to. I'm not necessarily pointing at you when I say this, but it's amazing what an extra goal does in terms of everyone's perception of him.
I
That
said
it's
that
like, okay,
last
Tom,
week though. He was
yeah,
one goal away from people being
yeah,
like, "Oh, he's great."
yeah. No, and Tom, you were just so right about it. It is funny because I'm now looking at his data, and I see that in terms of expected FPL points, Gallagher, Embuemo, Doucouré, Sarri would have expected about 36 points. And, Mbuemo is the one who's, seriously underperformed in that bracket up to now, even, with the weekend's goal. And you look at that and you're like, okay, is that a glitch or a feature of him? And it's like, if his underperformance is a feature, I don't want him. If the fact that he's underperformed is a glitch, then you want him. And it kind of comes down to what you believe. Like, obviously,
yeah,
it's hard. The thing with this is that it's very hard for anyone to advocate for an Andros Townsend character instead. Doucouré obviously playing quite far forward and getting quite involved and doing an awful lot of running at the moment that makes him really interesting. But at the end of the day, like his expected data it doesn't scream out in any sense. Like he is 1.11 in terms of XG, 1.27 in terms of XA. Like neither of these are numbers to write home about. Whereas with Embuemo, at least you can say out of position, goal threat, XG is almost 3. Good, and of course Brentford playing as well as they are as well, and kind of seemingly able to do it against almost anyone, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely. Abdul was completely right as well about him being out of position. I think if you've watched him, he caught my eye a couple of weeks ago against Wolves, and then week before last. I think that this week it kind of hammered it home for me, really. What I like most about him, I said this on the spaces that we do on the Thursday night, but what I like most about him is that he's always looking for that second ball, and that was writ large in his goal this week. He kept going, expecting a rebound, or in the hope that a rebound would happen. Like he's been kind of lurking around the Tony knockdowns, like lurking in those dangerous positions, waiting for that rebound to happen. It did happen this week. But as you mentioned, Anthony, second for XGI, just below Jota in terms of mids for this category, but he's light in terms of the XGI. Whether that is, as you say, a feature or a glitch is one thing, but the way Brentford are playing, the way he's positioned on the pitch, both of them make me think he's worth owning. The only thing is if Wissa then comes in, because Wissa scored a couple of goals late, whether they change systems to fit him in, go away from their two up top and maybe have a winger, things might change. But I think that he's definitely one that I really like. There are a couple of players that we quite like. Rafinha, I guess, a top pick here is. It remains with Rafinha. The eye test, I think he's just near unplayable. Only 6.6. He's had the most shots amongst midfielders in this category. He's second for chances created. Not exactly screaming it out in the data, but if you watch him play, Abdul, he's one of those who's just, he's straight in your team, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just like, I think he's no offense to Leeds here, but he is a class above Leeds, and I think he's a good enough player to play on top 4 side. But yeah, he's just the best player on the pitch. And the thing with him as well, he's on like all set pieces. Like he's on corner, he's on free kicks, direct free kicks, indirect free kicks. So he's his avenue to points is quite large as well. But with I think with Rafinha, the next kind of best option around that kind of price point is Sarr. But I just think with Sarr's fixtures, there's that sea of red, and yeah, I think he's got one good fixture in the next 10 games. So yeah, I think it's why I'm not really kind of attracted to him.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for Ranieri, isn't it? I think he was in my honourable mention category. Honourable mention, he's been great. Owners who have gotten him and attacked those fixtures, the first 7 have been richly rewarded. But Watford are terrible. If you watch them play, wow. Ben Foster described the 1-0 defeat to Leeds as a 1-0 thrashing. And we definitely get to the point, Anthony, I think, where we get Talisman Fury rubbing up against bad team, don't we? It'd be interesting to see what Ranieri does with him. Maybe give him the ball, hope he turns into his new Mahrez. But I think it would be one where, as Abdul says, the fixtures just kind of make you think, really?
It is, and it's just if you've watched Watford at any amount up to this point, you wouldn't have been all that confident in them. And like, okay, yeah, Sarr is a good player and kind of stands out in their team. I've kind of talked about before in previous pods about just kind of the positions he's taking up just not being particularly useful, and just it makes it hard for him to get into a really threatening shot zone. And so if you look on something like FBref or something, which kind of sets out his XG and his XA on a per game basis and really like easy to look at column game by game, you kind of start to see that, you know, he has had some big games, but in the games in between, like, that he hasn't necessarily been able to get much of a sniff on goal. And so it's like, whilst he has up to this point, you know, a pretty decent score for his price or whatever, it's not enough to maybe justify kind of getting him ahead of the likes of Rafinha and things. And it's just because of the prices and the fact that there is people like Mbeumo that you might want, and because there are players that you would spend, you know, that 6.5-ish on in defense, who you would actually expect to outscore him or at least to match him. It means that it is hard to get him in. And I guess if you would put someone like Sarr into your side, you're probably sacrificing putting in a good third striker. We'll come to that, of course. But someone like Tony would be the sort of player who I think would be the one that you'd be sacrificing if you did want to get him in. So there's a little bit of a relationship there between, we talked about there being, you know, the TAA Son relationship, and I think this is at a much lower pricing. There is kind of a bit of a thing going on there in terms of your third midfielder slot or your third striker slot.
Yeah, they're all inexorably linked, aren't they? The only other thing I want to ask about something quickly. I mean, you went for Saka this week. I'm guessing you'll be holding on to that. And I guess, you know, Arsenal, the big bang against Tottenham, but a bit of a bust against Brighton. I said last week, I think it was classic Arsenal to win convincingly against Tottenham and then kind of struggle against, well, I know Brighton are elite in terms of the stats, but
this is what I was about to say. I was like, any stats person will tell you.
Yeah, and on paper, mid-table club, it's classic us to not struggle exactly, but produce absolutely F all. I mean, you got Saka, you got Smith Rowe there. I mean, our friend Adam Pritchard be kind of you know, espousing the virtues of Smith Rowe. You're very happy with Saka, aren't you? I mean, the next kind of 3 games in 4 at the Emirates, Crystal Palace, Villa, and Leicester and Watford. I mean, those are decent games as well. For him and for Smith Rowe, we spoke about last week, he's getting into those attacking positions. I mean, you're very happy on Saka, I assume.
I am. Like, of course, this week I'm kind of like, oh, it would have been great to get those points from, you know, X, Y, and Z player that I could have brought in instead. But overall, as a non-wildcarder, I had to look ahead at the fixtures, and I was like, okay, Arsenal had a good 5 fixtures as it was. You know, the Brighton one I didn't see as the worst fixture in the world. I wasn't too hopeful, but at the same time, I did think that Saka is the type of player who gets in the positions and would have a chance. He did indeed, you know, have a little bit of a chance against Brighton. It didn't come to pass, but he did have a chance early on.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, that's what I kind of expected from him, and I think it will pay dividends. I hope it will anyway over the next few weeks. Like, of course, he hasn't got a huge amount of goals so far this season. It's 2, but I'd be hopeful that as Arsenal improve, and they are definitely, I feel, improving, and I feel that they're getting somehow they are slowly but surely coming towards something that looks a little bit more cohesive. You know, they were under they're getting an awful lot of flack earlier in the year.
That'd be nice.
I feel like I'm not necessarily saying that Arsenal are going to win all these games, but I'd be hopeful that they'd score in quite, you know, in maybe all of them, and that someone like Saka would be, you know, I would expect to have like something like a 50% goal involvement, 40% goal involvement in those, just given kind of the profile of their attack and just how involved he is, and so that's pretty good for me. And if any of the Arsenal strikers get going, the likes of Aubameyang and Lacazette, they wouldn't be ones I'd be looking to bring in, but Saka has as good a chance as any of being the one to be providing for them.
Yeah, it's GI for that money. So I think Rafinha for Abdul, Rafinha for me, and Anthony, I assume probably.
It's Rafinha. I have him on my side too.
Cool.
But I've made that space and still have Saka. Yeah.
Excellent. Enablers, probably a bit of a shorter chat here. I mean, Abdul, I noticed in your team you've got Basuma. I'm guessing that's because you haven't really paid much attention to it for now, unless you've seen something godlike.
That would be the correct answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's just simply you know, because of. I mean, there's only, I think, Basuma and Brownhill, I would say. I think Gilmore's out of the picture now.
Oh, here we go. Lad hasn't listened to the pod recently.
Are you on
terrible.
at Douglas Luiz?
No, it's Alan. It's all about Alan.
Oh,
He's 4.6, of course. He's got a price rise. That's how good he's been, Abdul. He's had a price rise to 4.6.
I thought Alan was 5.5.
No, but that's how much good value there is in the man.
Yeah, I just read on things now, and then I honestly thought he was 5.5. Wow. Okay, yeah, he's he's
24 points,
2 assists. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's 2 assists.
That's a huge oversight.
He's
I thought he was 5.5. Like I was actually looking to get Brownhill in my team because he was.
Oh my word!
He's 4.4.
It pains me.
To be fair, I think with my wildcard is I have a feeling it's going to be so tight that I'm going to have to get somebody like Brownhill who is like at a point 0.1 million cheaper now. But I'm
all right. I mean, let me help you on the 4.5s then. There are two, I think, which do stand out. Sorry to Alan. He's clearly the best one out there. What Basuna does offer, which is like the really occasional return. There are a couple of players out there who look okay. As you mentioned that, Abdul, Douglas Luiz, 12 chances created so far at 4.5. That's looking all right. If you're looking for an attacking one in some senses, Norman at Norwich loves the long shot, and he's also on direct free kicks, funnily enough. He's had 4 of them. He had two attempts on target. We're talking, Anthony, before you start laughing, about really, really bad players in terms of the team. So you're looking for an occasional return somewhere. Douglas Luiz, Norman, at 4.5, those are the kind of players who can do it for you, I think. Why
not just get the absolutely nailed player playing in a pretty decent midfield?
Douglas Luiz and Norman are both nailed, and Villa are good. Norwich aren't, but Villa are good.
Well, Alan has been delivering. He's got the point so far. He's had 1 shot all season, but ignore that. Instead, look to those sweet 2 assists from 5.
But wasn't one of them a penalty assist?
Yeah,
one of them was a penalty assist. That's how far forward he gets sometimes. I was as surprised as him.
Sorry.
We're not talking about Douglas Luiz. We're just going to ignore that. This is the Alan show. Douglas Luiz's underlying data.
I clearly
it's definitely better. Douglas Luiz. In fairness, like I won't be too obstinate on this. Like Douglas Luiz's underlying data is definitely better. It's just the Alan shout was a pre-season shout of mine that I felt like he was better than Brownhill when that's where people were going, and just the fact that he'd managed to pull out 2 assists so far in the campaign has just been music to my ears. So yeah, like if you were to actually look at things in terms of expected FPL points so far this year, Alan is actually the highest ranking of the, formerly 4.5s. It's only kind of 5. You have to look to really to players who are 5 or 4.9 million, who are kind of in that really cheap enabling bracket ahead of him. And, are you really going to be getting someone like Janelt or Moutinho or Norgard or Rice or Højbjerg ahead of him and spending an extra amount of money? No. So at that point, then you're looking at Alan is right there. And MacArthur actually is the second best.
He's 4.6 as well now.
He's 4.6 as well, yes. But they are the 2 who, in terms of expected FPL points, are right up there. Although I would expect Douglas Luiz to probably catch up to them pretty soon.
Yeah, I'll be looking Douglas Luiz, I think. All right, that's the top pick there, I think, easily. Let's move on to the defence, and let's move on to the premiums of the defence. So Trent in trouble, we've already discussed that, and obviously Abdul's presented his wild card without Trent in at the moment. I'm not going to go into Trent in the same way we're not going to go into Salah. We've already sold him to you. You should have been sold to him if you listened to WGTA. But I think what's really interesting is what we talked about last week, that double, the Man City and Chelsea defence, and doubling up on them. Any further info this week? Well, I mean, Man City, despite conceding a couple of goals, we're still on less than 1 big chance conceded per game. Chelsea are doing less well, shockingly, but they're still bottom 5, for example, in a lot of analog stats. Like they're still bottom 5 of shots on target conceded. For them, the fixtures are both worth mentioning for the short term. So City, the next 3 are Burnley, Brighton, and Crystal Palace. You can imagine all 3 of them being clean sheets. You can equally imagine 1 big chance going in, knowing what City are like. But Chelsea as well have Brentford, Norwich, Newcastle, and Burnley, which does lend itself to this double of Chelsea and City defence for wildcarders. Abdul, I mean, I noticed that you've gone with Diaz and Cancelo. I guess you're kind of just looking at this next period and thinking, well, after a couple of tough games and obviously last game week, both of those players, Diaz and Cancelo, got 0 pointers after getting yellow cards and conceding 2. People are going to be put off them, but nonetheless, Cancelo rose last night. What are your thoughts about kind of setting up for this particular period around those premium defenses?
Yeah, I think. I think I'm coming down to the fact now that I don't want a double. Like I don't want a double City and a double Chelsea defense. So it's going to be one or the other. So I've gone with City just simply because I mean, if you look at their expected goals conceded, right, it's 3, and then the next best after that is Brighton, which is 5.7. So they're quite a bit ahead of the rest of the pack. Chelsea are probably the second best defense, but obviously that doesn't show in the numbers because I think that's obviously due to their fixtures. I mean, they've played. I think they played Arsenal away. They played Spurs. They played City. They played Liverpool. So I don't think you can kind of. I think you need to take their expected goals conceded with the
100%. 100%.
So they're definitely the 2 best defenses, but just City are just kind of. I think they're a level above. The rest of all the other teams' defense. And which is why I'm really, really kind of keen on a double City defense. I think if you're maybe struggling for, if you're on the wild card, every penny counts. So I don't think having a double Chelsea defense instead of a double City defense, as long as you've got one City defender there, is the end of the world. And that could be a path I go, depending on budget, etc. But I definitely think you have to have at least one City and one Chelsea midfield defense, and I think everyone's aware of that.
Yeah, I'll be behind that. I mean, I think one kind of stat I noted with looking at both of these teams, both of the players, Azpilicueta, I keep pushing him, but fair enough, and Cancelo, who also own now. They're joint third with pen box touches on amongst defenders. Cancelo is actually third for attempts. But I also noted as well that Laporte at 5.5, who I assume is going to be in until rotation hits or until he loses his spot. He and Van Dijk have the second joint most shots in the box now amongst defenders behind the unit that is Shane Duffy. But Laporte has played only 5 games. So he gets an attempt, therefore, every 45 minutes, which is worth keeping tabs on as well. I'm going to mention this one more time, but with Azpilicueta, I'm happy with that return this week because I was bang on about him being a hybrid. So he was playing right wing back this week. If James wasn't around, I'm sure he may have been right centre back. But 2 assists this week, filling in for James was really gratifying. I think there's only one chance created, but it really, really interesting to see that kind of shake out. He's actually equal now with Alonso for XGI, with Cancelo in third. Trent, of course, is first on that metric. I mean, Anthony, where are you now on this? I mean, obviously, Man United out of the picture. You'll be very pleased to hear that Shaw's being assured from loads of teams. Where are you with these kind of high-priced defenders?
Like, if people had just thought a little bit, I think they should never have gone for Shaw. But yes,
right, calm down.
So that's one thing I called right this year. Actually, one thing I would say, you're just mentioning Azpilicueta quite there. It was Rudiger would have had the assist on one of the Lukaku goal that was ruled for offside on one of his marauding runs. He ended up playing the ball through and things. And just, it is kind of interesting. Azpilicueta was kind of maybe fortunate to get one of those assists, just the type of assist that it was. It wasn't the one, it wasn't the type of assist you bought him for. The other one, the Werner goal wasn't exactly the type of assist you were hoping to get. And so it is interesting to me that, Rudiger could have got there. He had another marauding run that set off Cho. That could have actually worked out for him as well. So he, in a very odd way, he could have been the one with an assist or two, the way things worked out. But I think the underlying stats speak for themselves. That Azpilicueta is probably the Chelsea defender to get, just because he has that expected minutes thing as well. This is all we discussed last week. But it does feel like the difference in terms of the objective data between how much more solid City's defense is than Chelsea's is, means that I would, even though the fixtures are obviously in Chelsea's favour, still the City fixtures are, have improved an awful lot now that they've got the Liverpool game out of the way. But it feels to me like if you were to double up on one of those defences, it's still the City one that I would point to. I think Ederson is, and we'll get to this, a component of that because he just has that nailedness. And I think it allows you then to kind of indulge in the gamble of somebody like Cancelo, who, when he's on the pitch, will do quite a lot for you, poses a huge threat in terms of he's kind of like Trent in terms of the actual threat that he poses in terms of attacking threat. He's not quite there, but he's as close as any we've got elsewhere in the league. So that's kind of where I'm at with those City defenders. I still think that there's like a bit of an allure with Diaz purely because I consider him more nailed. But
a massive goal threat as well, I hear.
It's gonna come. It's gonna come. He's up there for those corners.
Yeah,
it's gonna come.
It's gonna happen one time this season. But yeah,
no. He'll get 4 goals.
Yeah, fair enough. Cancelo, an Iberian man's Trent. Fair enough. Moving through this to the supports, I mean, it feels like this is a bit of a skipped category, isn't it? Bar Christensen. I think he's my sort of pick here because if you have a bench you can rely on, he can get you 6 points. One player, I'm going to just go through this. I'm going to move on to the cheapies in a second. But one player I want to mention, which is an eye roller, it comes out in the data, is Matt Ritchie, aka Gordon Ramsay Jr. So he's playing left wing back for Newcastle, cost 5 million. He's created as many chances as Trent this year in the data. He's created more chances than the likes of Shaw and Cresswell. He's created the second most crosses. He's on all set pieces. He's had the 5th most attempts at goal amongst defenders, and he's got the second highest XA to Trent. Really random pickup, basically, because
it could be really sustained if Callum Wilson was around.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And also, am I going to be really pushing somebody based in Newcastle? No, I'm not. But data's there for all to see. A reposition midfielder, basically. And Tierney as well as one who's doing okay in the creative chances. But let's move on to the enablers. That's more important. 4.5 is your worth it. I mean, Abdul, you've gone with the Tomiyasu in that defence. I guess Arsenal's defence has definitely kind of tightened a lot. Fairly recently. I mean, data's fairly contentious because they've only because Ramsdale, for example, has only played in the last 4. But since then, we've actually conceded the fewest big chances and the 3rd fewest shots on target. So it makes sense to go with Tomiyasu, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at Arsenal's fixtures, I mean, you know, especially the next 4. You know, I can see at least 2 clean sheets in there with Crystal Palace, Watford, you know, possibly Villa as well. Yeah, so I really like Arsenal's defence, you know. But again, with Tomiyasu, I think he's a better option than White. But you know, whether he's kind of worth the 0.1 million, I don't know. But
I mean, he basically is just doing the Ben Davis under Mourinho, like he just tucks into the back 3 while Tierney rampages forward. But I mean, he does get forward to some extent.
Yeah, I think a lot more than White anyway. But yeah, but yeah, I mean, I definitely think I think Arsenal defence is like seriously undervalued. You know, with White and Tomiyasu, you know, they're a much better defence than, you know, 4.5 million. You know, I think them along with Brighton defenders are really undervalued. So yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that I'll be playing, you know, my Arsenal defender much, you know, over the next few game weeks. But he's a great person to have on your bench. You know, if one of your players are injured, needs to come in. And then yeah, I think I like the Arsenal defence. I think they'll do well over the next few. And I think apart from, you know, that kind of price point, you know, the 4.5, you know, downwards, there's only really you know, Duffy and Livramento, and possibly Veltman as well. Actually, Veltman's still 4.4. So those 3 are worth a shout as well.
Yeah, maybe I'll just kind of mop up in this particular area. There's kind of the Shane Duffy is the one who kind of needs to be discussed in this 4.3. He's obviously super duper cheap, really accessible in that sense. Still playing for that Brighton defence and seems to be holding his spot at this point. I don't think we feel any doubt about that at this point. He hasn't really set a foot wrong so far. Whilst he does get an awful lot of chances and he's had 13 shots, like the XG that those have cumulatively ain't much. It ain't much at all. 0.32 between them all. So I guess, you know, those headers that he's getting off corners and the like are not exactly high value chances. And so whilst he has got 1 goal this year, I wouldn't be holding your breath on expecting those to come super duper regularly. It does feel though that of the cheapies, it does feel like Livramento is kind of the king in this. It's kind of an eye test thing for me more than anything, in just how far forward he gets so frequently. And I think a testament to that is the fact that he won the penalty that Southampton scored against Chelsea at the weekend. You know, kind of just gives you an idea of how far forward he is getting. And so whilst he's got that just one assist so far this year, you would expect him to, get the odd assist. Like, he's not like some sort of chance creating demon or anything. But at the same time,
anything he does is upside.
No longer 4.0 at this point.
He's done so well inside out as well.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, like a good player who definitely seems to have nailed his spot in that team at this point, and is just a great pickup to have that just enables you. And it was no surprise to me to see him in your side, Abdul. I know a lot of us, maybe you're the same, had him picked up a little bit earlier than this, but he is the cheap pick of the lot.
I still regret to this day not doing Shimicast to Livramento, and he was 4 million and Shimicast was 4.2. Anyway, the only thing I want to add here is that Rico Henry at Brentford could be one to pick up on for game week 10 when they've got a good fixture run. It's only an eye testy one, but he plays so far forward on the left hand side, and he could provide some assists going forward. But let's move on here from the defence. It sounds like we're kind of broadly in line around Livramento being the cheapie that you'd be buying in to between the sticks in goal. Yeah, we've got a question from FPL Bean Counter on this. So he says, let's talk goalkeepers. You guys, and the voice in my head, so you must be right, he says we're the only ones talking about Edison, mainly because Stag is a massive fan of Edison for some reason. But do the pros outweigh the cons? Is he really worth the extra 1 to 1.5 million versus a cheap goalkeeper with good fixture runs? I mean, Anthony, Edison, worth buying in? Is it I remember FPL Dread said a couple of weeks ago, is he like the Galaxy Brain sort of pick? The ultimate silent assassin differential? Is that the way you're looking at it?
I don't think he's the type of player who you'd be looking at as a differential, because just given the way that City dominate games and the fact that he doesn't get many saves, doesn't tend to lend itself to him getting many bonus points. And whilst he does ping an awful lot of passes, he won't get, he hasn't gotten assists so far this year. In fact, he hasn't even got any XA so far this year. And whilst he might pick up an assist or even two over the course of the season, I don't think you could really be seeing him as a differential. Where I see him as providing value is in just supplementing your City defense and kind of giving you a more nailed on entrant into that City defense to guarantee that you get those points when they come, in addition to whatever other City defender you might have and double up. And so whilst, to be perfectly honest with you, and I can kind of see this as an argument that will be thrown against me immediately, if you look at expected FPL points or indeed FPL points more generally, he isn't going to streak ahead of other goalkeepers. But what he does do is, especially compared to the other premiums, I feel like he is a more guaranteed source of points, whereas it would be very hard to nail your, let's say, 4.5 pick week in, week out. You're going to have to make that change at some point. Moving those deck chairs in the Titanic to match Ederson's points from your goalkeeping position over the course of the rest of the season will be challenging. Is it possible? Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you could predict the future, there's a far better way of going about the goalkeeper position than Ederson. But if you don't want to get into crystal ball gazing, I just feel like he's a very good option that gets you into that City defense and allows you to just kind of buffer yourself in an EO from an EO perspective against that defense too.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, there's definitely him there. I'm not sure you want to limit the triple up on Liverpool with Alisson. Him, Ederson, Alisson, and Lloris. I wish it was Greater, but Lloris are the three who are currently the top scoring goalkeepers. In the 5.0s, there's like some Melier, DG, whatever. In the 4.5s, I guess, though, I hate Guaita. 4.5s and co. I hate Guaita. I'm really annoyed about buying him, even though he's got the most saves amongst 4.5s, which I guess is what he's there for. He's the second per the baseline BPS or whatever. But I guess, Ramsdale, Abdul is where you've gotten. And I guess echoing your points earlier on about the Arsenal defence, it feels like him at 4.6 looks like the undervalued proposition in this area, and it's one that I'm maybe, if I want to just end the Guaita pain, would go to fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, you're complaining about Guaita, but Sanchez has actually got a point less than him, so you're at least winning against the Sanchez owners.
Oh yeah, but I've only in 1 week, 2 weeks, sorry, and both weeks he's been outscored by Sanchez or equaled and outscored. So.
Yeah, that's the thing with goalkeeper, just a total lottery. But I mean, Ramsdale again, he's amazing value at 4.5, but I still think Sanchez is as well. And to be fair, I'm not actually 100% on Ramsdale yet. I still, because I've got Tomiyasu or White, I might still go with Sanchez. But he's got Liverpool and City in the next 3, so that's the one thing that's putting me off. But I think over maybe like 10 15 fixtures, he probably will kind of maybe pick up more assists, more clean sheets than Ramsdale. But yeah, I mean, at the moment I'm on the double up because obviously, as I said, I can't see me playing Arsenal defender much over the next few weeks if I'm going to go for like a kind of a big at the back defence, with the City and Chelsea boys. But it's between Sanchez and Ramsdale, isn't it, really, for the 4.5s? I mean, saying that, actually, Reyes probably got.
Yeah, I was going to say Reyes, the one there.
Shout as well. I just think Sanchez and Ramsdale are kind of more nailed, whereas Reyes probably more the risky pick.
I'd be interested to hear. Oh, sorry, Tom.
So better defences for Raya so far, which is a bit of a surprise. Sanchez and for Ramsdale are the difference makers, whereas with Guaita, it's defensive players are back, so it's not as great.
I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, Abdul, on the idea of Ederson. Rip into it if you want. I'm not possessive of it or anything.
I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of merit in what you're saying, but I don't know. I just don't think. I just think even like with the attacking threat that Diaz has, over, and the potential bonus points, it is still worth it over Ederson. And when you just see like the other options, like for example Sanchez and Ramsdale at 4.5, who are so undervalued, I think it makes Ederson's inclusion really, really difficult for me.
Understandable.
Yeah. No, it certainly makes sense. I think maybe Sanchez, but Ramsdale will become this as well. But I think Sanchez and Ederson are the same typology of goalkeeper, where you've got 6 or 2. There's no in between.
Yeah.
And I think that Ederson perhaps isn't quite worthy of involvement. Over the course of the season, it definitely will be. It's just whether that 1.5 million difference, or 1.4 million it is now, is worth that investment. All right, let's move on to the final bit, which is the forwards. So into attack we go. Is it the end of Ronkaku? We've got a question on this, so maybe let's part the in-depth discussion on the Threemiums, whether things change in terms of structural stuff. But on the player level, which one would you favour and why? So, I mean, Abdul, Ronaldo in the bin, Lukaku in. I don't know it. But what's the reason behind that?
I mean, just simply because I'm on a Wildcard, and with Chelsea fixtures picking up, and United's taking a downturn. Obviously, there's the price factor as well. He's 1 million cheaper. And actually, I actually think Lukaku is probably a better FPL asset than Ronaldo, because he's got the assist threat as well, and I think he's just younger. I think he'll play more minutes as well. So I think, when you're looking at, especially with with him being 1 million cheaper, I prefer Lukaku. If you're asking me now to pick one for the rest of the season, it would be Lukaku.
Yeah, he seems the all-round best, I suppose, amongst the premium strikers as it stands. He's got the second highest XG behind Ronaldo per game, comfortably the best XA, as you mentioned, like comfortably. And Fix give him the highest XFPL per game as well. And with Chelsea, it's worth noting, I think you mentioned it earlier, actually, Abdul, they haven't had their run as it is yet of fixtures. So United have. And they've played Liverpool, City, and Spurs, and the mighty Arsenal so far. They've had to adjust their games accordingly. So I expect Lukaku to come to the fore as fixtures beget form. But again, kind of reaching into our questions a slight bit here. There's one man who, when we're looking at the data, came through. So FPL Vanarama and Ryan N both mentioned about Jamie Vardy, who does fit into this premium category, Anthony. I mean, is he the one that we probably all should have got on? Because over the last couple of weeks, he's outscored Ronaldo and outscored Lukaku comfortably.
It's hard to say, because I think if you watch Leicester playing, it's hard to get too excited by what's going on. And Vardy has had 2 particularly good game weeks in terms of FPL points, you're kind of you're looking at kind of the overall performances there and kind of struggling to be as inspired as you might be. Like, the fact of the matter is, though, is that like I feel like I'm hilarious in terms of the way I'm just oscillating from side to side on the Ronaldo thing. I'm now looking at him like fed up, and that's not necessarily because he was benched at the weekend. I would have expected that to come at some point. It's more just the fashion that United are playing. It's just it's driving me nuts, maybe as a fan to start with, and then I kind of feel like it's just his expected or his effective ownership against me is what really, you know, makes it hard to sell him, and that's not going to change anytime soon. And so with that in mind, I'm very slow to hit that button on him. Whereas with Vardy, it's kind of like I would have felt like he would have been a real dice roll to go against the house that hard with someone like Vardy, even though he has like he has consistently got goals, sometimes in patches, in fairness, over the last few years. You would have still thought it would have been a bit much to go for him. The other striker who's maybe in this elite category, who isn't coming up much in conversation so far, did come up briefly when we were discussing Son, is Harry Kane. Probably still not for me just yet, but even found himself through one-on-one against Martinez at the weekend, didn't quite finish it, did score for Spurs in the Europa League, of course, against quite weak opposition. Was it a hat-trick? Was it a brace? I can't even remember anymore. One of the two.
Hat-trick.
A hat-trick, yeah. So it's like, it was kind of like one of those kind of, you know, it was like something happens in the League Cup. It's like, okay, it doesn't really matter. But at the same time, it's like the scoring touch is there at least. And Spurs seem to be one good performance anyway, looking a little bit better than they were. And so again, it's the level of betting against the house required to go for Kane, rather than, let's say, going for the two premium strategy, going with Lukaku and spreading your wealth out and being able to get a good defense and being able to have a strong midfield, etc. And it's like, is the risk worth it to really invest so much hope in somebody like Kane? And I think nobody can really say right now that the answer is yes. And so that's really the issue. You feel like but it's Ronaldo argument kind of means that it's a bit harder to sell Ronaldo in this case than that there is.
There's a question for you later as well on the Threemium, so we'll leave it till then.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like memeish going back and forth on the Ronaldo thing. It's ridiculous.
Despair on that. But on that theme of betting against the house as well, let's move on to the mid-price. I think we were all kind of in agreement that Lukaku's the premium. In the mid-price range, obviously one man dominated everything. It was Antonio. Most goals scored, of course, but is a drop-off incoming. The next block of 4 games before the final international break of this calendar year does not look as appetizing as the opening did. The next 4 are Everton, Spurs, Villa, and Liverpool. Maybe an ouch, qualified ouch. Nonetheless, the best XG, second highest XA amongst all forwards, and at the opening 7.5 million price, you've got to think that remains value. However, there are a couple of players coming in to this kind of cycle. So Jimenez, back in fashion, 2 assists last game, a goal the game before, 2 assists in the last game, off an XA of 0.1. Amazing. Second most touched in the box, though, amongst strikers, Jimenez. A hot off the press sort of pick as well in Iheanacho. Obviously, nothing's really commended to us thus far, but last season was equal to Kane for goals scored in the second half of last season. And amongst the big guns, all sorts of stats. He's been a bit unlucky to lose out to Maddison, but surely Brendan Rodgers has realised that they tend to do okay with 2 up top. The likes of Jesus also in the frame, and Armstrong as well. I want to just mention quickly, more with the fixtures coming up. So Southampton's fixtures brighten up a little bit. He loves a shot. He's second for this. And last season in the Championship, he averaged 5 shots per game, which is a bit ridiculous. His XG is a bit crap, but he's 4th for penalty box entry so far this season among strikers, and he's 3rd for shots on target this season. Those fixtures I mentioned, Leeds, Burnley, Watford, Aston Villa and Norwich, they include 3 home games in the next 5. Could it be time for a 6.0 enabler like him to step up? But I mean, Abdul, the key question has to be about Antonio, doesn't it? I mean, obviously he's still in your wild card, but how long do you think he's going to remain? Because with a player like that, the art is when you step off, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Antonio, for me, at 7.5 million, the price I got him at, I think he'll probably stay in my team as long as he's fit. I just think his
ex-goat, isn't he?
yeah, I mean his stats, if in comparison to his price, are just kind of, again, extremely undervalued player. And he's over the season as well. He's one of those players, he can score against anybody. Like I think he scored against City and Liverpool, last season as well. So I don't mind keeping him, for these tough fixtures. If he was maybe priced at say 9.5, then maybe I'd look to maybe move him on for like a little tough run that he's got right now maybe. But at 7.5, I think he's probably gone nowhere.
Fair play. I mean, how do you see the strikers sort of playing out? I mean, do you have any interest in Jimenez? He's not on your wild card, is he? I mean, is that one of those players that we're looking to bring in? Because we were saying last week that he needed a goal, and this week, even though the stats weren't great to the eye in terms of the returns as well, he looked like he was more likely to be returning in an FPL sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think I still like Jimenez. I mean, it is we obviously be a bit worrying that his XG stats and where they were last season, but his obviously assist stats have rocketed. But I just think when you're looking at players at similar or cheaper price point, like me personally, I think Tony's a better option than Jimenez, especially when you take the 1.2 million. Tony's 1.2 million cheaper. I think Armstrong, with those fixtures coming up, I think he's a better option than Jimenez as well. So he's not really came into my thinking. I mean, I've only really got one spot, for the forwards. I've got Lukaku and Antonio who are nailed, and then it's that third spot.
I mean, talk to me about Tony. I mean, I've got Mbeumo, but I kind of for me, in my thinking, it's either or. But you've gone for Tony and Mbeumo. I mean, why have you gone that way? And what is it about Tony that makes you think, oh, he's definitely worthy of inclusion? Is it that kind of fixture run from Gameweek 10?
Yeah, I mean, it's that, and the fact that it's a bit of the eye test as well. When you see him play, against Liverpool, he pretty much bullied Virgil van Dijk and Matip. So I just think he's the type of player, he's going to get goals and assists, and at 6.3 million, great value. And I think if I get rid of him on a wild card, I think once Gameweek 10 comes around, I'm going to want him back in. But again, saying that, I mean, I really want him, but I mean, just the way the kind of wild card is setting up as well, he could possibly be, one of the ones, that have to
taken down.
Yeah, and
I think sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just think with Mbeumo at 5.5, I can bring him in, that kind of, will soften the blow a bit. But yeah, it's a tough one. I really love Tony, and I love Brentford as well.
Yeah, I do as well. But I just think Mbeumo is getting in those positions and making it. He's not going to. I don't think he'll score as many points as Tony, but I don't think it'll be as far off, especially given the fact that he's a midfielder at the moment. I mean, next year he's going to be assuming Brentford stay up. Like Tony will be a 7.5 billion striker, and Mbeumo will be a 6.5 million striker. I think that would be the way it goes this year. We've got that kind of opportunity to exploit, as it were. And speaking of those kind of cheap enablers, I mean, if there is a space to take Tony down for you, we're into enabler territory. It is the end of Dennis, probably. We'll see. But Wolves were no great shakes. Maybe Ranieri. Watford, no great shakes. Maybe Ranieri will, see something in Dennis that he really likes. I mean, he did do all right in Belgium. But is this the start of the Huang wagon? So there's very limited data on him, except to say he's brilliant on Football Manager. It's got limited minutes for Leipzig in the Bundesliga. But in 2019-20, he had a ridiculous 1.32 goal involvements per 90, but it is the Austrian Premier League, of course. A decent average for shots on targets per 90 as well. But what's really interesting is FBref throws up kind of similar players to the kind of player he is, just to give you a grounding in the kind of guy that you're expected to be signing. And Daniel James and Richarlison were two recognisable names that he had a similar profile to. And I think from looking at the data and what I know from Football Manager, regardless of how useful that is or not, Richarlison, I think, is probably the closest to how Huang is as a player, playing off the wing, cutting inside and inside forward, the football manager parlance. But it's priced in, Anthony, isn't it? 5.5. You know, you love me saying that. But he could be very decent if Dennis isn't fancied by Ranieri at 5.5. But I mean, for me, I'm looking at going for 3-5-2 or a 4-4-2. So I think that kind of as I move forward, the forward category will become less and less valuable. So I'm looking at kind of having Dennis just sat there as being kind of second sub, third sub going forward. But I mean, in the enabler slots, is there anyone else catching your eye, or is it all about the Huang wagon?
Huang, I think, is the one that I'd be looking at primarily. And that's not just because, okay, he's got 3 goals and 2 of those came in game week 7 against Newcastle, which would obviously give you confidence. But what I quite like about him is that he seems to be a bit more clinical than the likes of Trincao, than the likes of Traore, but he still gets to benefit from the creative phenom, to be perfectly honest with you, that is Raul Jimenez. That's what actually makes me interested in him. It's like Jimenez feels like a little bit of a jump, like he's returned well. It's great to see it. I'm delighted to see him having a few good game weeks now, given what he's been through. But at 7.5, he's a bit of a stretch, given just how profligate Wolves have been. Whereas Huang is a good entrant into that Wolves attack for cheap. Obviously, you wouldn't expect to be playing him every week, but he will. That Wolves team have proven themselves quite adept at setting up chances against pretty much anybody. And it just seems like Jimenez, in spite of his good goal scoring track record pre his injury, his most important function right now from an FPL perspective, as far as I'm concerned, is his creativity. And that's what we saw feeding Huang at the weekend, obviously twice quite successfully, but that wasn't the only time that Huang was fed by Jimenez. It wasn't even the only time that Huang was fed by others as well. And I think that's what makes me quite confident that he is quite a decent enabler pick. I'm not going to tell you he's going to take over the world. I don't even think he's going to necessarily outscore Jimenez this season, but in terms of value for the price that you're paying, that's pretty good, I think. And with 4 good fixtures for Wolves to come, for people who are wildcarding, I think he's as good a pick as anybody. As you say, Dennis, really, are we I just don't feel like that's an exciting one.
Let's not waste our time with that.
Yeah, there was that one time that he scored, and it was great.
2 times he scored.
No, I know he scored twice, but there was the one time that people had bought him and he scored. And it was a great moment, and you cheered, and it's past now. And I just don't think that Josh King or another Josh Sargent or any of the rest of them are going to interest me enough. And Huang is as good an option as any. And it's just it's good not to waste that slot either. That third striker slot could be useful. It's more useful as far as I'm concerned than the 5th midfielder slot. Sorry, Alan. And so with that in mind, I think there's no point just throwing it to the Wolves with some 4.5er.
Yeah, but is it better than having a 4th defender slot? I'm not entirely sure. All right, so who are our top transfer targets? We've spoken about this to a lot, and we're kind of bringing this conversation to an end. So let's kind of just zone in on 3 certain picks. Obviously, not being obvious, so buy Salah is pretty clear. If Trent was fit, we'd say buy Trent. But I guess defense, midfield, and forward picks. Let's leave the goalkeepers be. For me, I think in defense it'd be Azpilicueta. For me, in midfield it'd be Rafinha, and up front it would be Lukaku. Boring, but I think probably fairly effective. Abdul on your midfield. Abdul on your wildcard. If you had 3 players that you were in those positions looking to buy in, who would the first name on your team sheet be? Would it be the same as mine?
I think for me it'd be Cancelo in defence. Midfield, obviously, I think we're not including Salah, are we? Of course, everyone's got him anyway. But I would say in midfield, it's a tough. I say Rafinha in midfield with the top transfer target.
Yeah, same as me then.
And up front, Lukaku. So yeah, it's only Cancelo for me. It's different from you.
2 out of 3. I'm guessing it's probably the same for you, Anthony, as well, given the state of the game in the moment.
Yeah, I'd love to go wild and come up with some different 3, but no, I think it's Cancelo for me ahead of Azpilicueta, and then I think Rafinha is as good as the that strong second pick in the midfield. I do think that he will be outscored by somebody. I just don't know who that is. There's that there's that mythical
Ferran
set
Torres,
of.
we need to mention
This
him.
is it. This is it. That's
It.
genuinely the words I was about to utter. The likes of Ferran Torres, Phil Foden, etc., could well outscore him. The problem is that they might get 1 point as well in the next 5 game weeks, and that's genuinely, that doesn't even feel like an exaggeration. And so with that in mind, it's just like, okay, Rafinha, and then you move on to the forward line. And I think I too would be looking at Lukaku. Although looking at enablers, I do feel like Hwang is as good a pick as any. Kind of in between is quite hard to identify, and that's kind of, I think, where there might be a little bit of joy to be got, because I don't think Antonio is the auto pick that he once was. I feel like it's EO is what's scaring most of us into getting him at this point, and so I kind of feel like that, you know, the 7.0-ish or 6.8-ish, let's say, to 8 to 8.5-ish million. I think there's going to be some really serious value there. Like for example, just to throw somebody out there, Ollie Watkins, who obviously has, you know, a decent enough fixture run coming up, has proven himself to be more than adept at doing well in the Premier League last season. Obviously 14 goals, 9 assists.
It should have been a 200-point season last year, as you said in the pricing.
Could easily have been a 200-point season, as we said. Just a few kind of hair's breadth offsides calls away, and just a little bit of luck away from getting there. And Villa seem to be kind of steadying the ship bit by bit.
Are you just saying buy Timo Werner?
There's a reason why. No. But there's a reason why so many of us were keen to have him in our game week 1 team before injury struck. And I think he may be starting to show that he obviously got a goal at the weekend.
Fair enough. Well, obviously we've all come up with fairly similar kind of outputs, but hopefully in there a lot of interesting discussion surrounding different price points and surrounding different options within those price points. Hopefully useful to you in terms of if you're wildcarding or just looking to make those transition transfers ahead of going forward into game week 8. All right, let's take a break there. Move on to the correspondence and the questions just after this. So we're back. On to the correspondence this week, as Anthony mentioned earlier on. We're a bit light on we going forward.
Yeah, we are actually quite light in correspondence. Whilst we got loads of emails a good few weeks ago to whogottheassist@gmail.com, that kind of tends to mean we don't plead as much for emails, and then the emails don't come. So we're back at the point where we're pleading again. So if you have any questions, thoughts, addendums to previous pods, poems, songs, whatever it might be, whogottheassist@gmail.com for future correspondence segments. But for now, we do have an email, and it comes from another person named Anthony Ngo. And he emailed in as follows. Hey guys, I've been listening to the pod for about 2 years now and really enjoy the content. I'm planning to use my wildcard in game week 8, and I may be looking at bench boosting in game week 9 or game week 11. I know the common practice is to save the bench boost for later in the season, or to try to get 14-15 players with a double game week, but that never seems to be worth the trouble. There's rotation risk, and you always end up weakening your starting 11 just to get a decent third bench player. There are a lot of options in the cheaper bracket of their respective positions right now. The likes of Arsenal, Leeds, Wolves, Palace, Brentford, Southampton all have good fixtures in game week 9 and game week 11. I'm not sure it'd be worth further discussion on a pod or anything, but a lot of people are using their wildcard in game week 7 or 8, and it seems like something worth considering. Thanks, Anthony. So I think it's a pretty interesting question he's posed to us, really, and it's an Abdul, I guess it really focuses on you because you're the wildcarder. But at the same time, I think there is, he has pointed out there are kind of compelling fixtures there in those kind of cheaper brackets, and they are the type of players that we've been discussing from the likes of Arsenal, Leeds, Wolves, Palace, Brentford, Southampton, etc., who have good fixtures that kind of mean that the bench boost is on in a way that it isn't usually, and maybe we do find ourselves forcing bench boost later in the season. So is it worth just going for it, setting your team up, knowing what's kind of coming right now, feeling like rotation won't be as big of a scourge upon your team because we're not in that late season where things get a bit unpredictable and where you might be able to benefit? Would you consider it at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one of those managers who think that, you know, the double game week with the bench boost is the only way to go. I mean, Anthony is, you know, spot on about, you know, the fixtures and the enablers that, you know, that are presented this week, and, you know, for game week 9. So, I mean, I would say if he has, you know, a solid plan, you know, that he's, you know, wild carding, you know, for the long term, but at the same time can get a good bench out for game week 9. You know, or 10 or 11, or, you know, whenever he's thinking of doing it and bench boosting, then yeah. But at the same time, I do think, I mean, the bench boost, you know, using the bench boost and the wild card and the double game weeks can hinder you as well. And having it out of the way just kind of, you know, focuses your mind on just, you the kind of the long term strategy rather than saving up until the bench boost. So yeah, I'd say if he's looked at the fixtures and he's studied it well, and he can come out the bench boost with by not kind of spending his funds too far over the squad, and having like a weaker starting 11, then yeah.
This is the thing, isn't it, though? It's like if you look at the the enablers and just think about your wildcard team for a second. Arsenal, you've got 2 Arsenal players on your side. Leeds, you've got 1. Wolves, you've got, I think it's, am I correct in saying 0 right now? Yeah, but it could easily be 1. Brentford, you've got 2. Palace, you've got none, and Southampton, you've got just the 1 right now. But it's like that gives you a good idea what a bench could look like. And for you, it's Ramsdale is kind of one of those in the goalkeeper slot as well. And there are kind of compelling pickups you could have there for that second goalkeeper slot in your side. Which means that it is quite an interesting one. And there are these aren't game weeks either where the elite teams have tough fixtures. There is a United Liverpool in game week 9 in there, and there is a Manchester Derby in game week 11. But I kind of feel like everyone's going to be as affected by those particular fixtures. So it is a week where your bench could really give you some solid green arrows. And I think you could also, as you say, avoid that headache later in the season.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea at all. As I say, I mean, as long as you've got a plan in place, and you've got to figure it out for the kind of long term, because obviously when you use the wild card, you need to be careful you're not just planning for the next few game weeks before you bench boost, especially when it's starting a double game week.
Yeah, I agree. I can see where Anthony's coming from. Anthony, I'm not too sure how he pronounces it, but I mean, it's much for muchness, really, isn't it?
He's got the H, and I'm very strong about making sure that it's Anthony if there's a H.
It's an H rather than H, but let's move on from there. There's a recent disappointment, I suppose, with bench boosts, which has overshadowed how we now reflect on them. We're a little bit removed, aren't we, from the 2016-2017 amazing game week that we all kind of hark back to about how the chips can really smash when we all got triple digit hauls. We're all looking at heading towards a double ton. But last year, for example, the Shrewsbury incident, which removed the triple Leeds bench, still gives me nightmares. We're all set up for that. We're all set up for that Leeds versus Southampton game appearing in double game week, and didn't quite work out. And then we all had to move around the last minute, and it was really difficult. With COVID still stalking us, and with the emphasis still on expected minutes, it kind of, as Abdul says, makes sense if you've got a plan to go that way. The fact is, I think it's becoming harder and harder to isolate exactly when we're all going to have our starters playing 2 games if we're going for double game week kind of model. So I can see why, if you've got a brilliant and relatively affordable team early on post wildcard, as opposed to later, we need to compromise a little bit. So you're always going to have a single game week or 2 later on. Making that do the business for you is definitely worth it. Over planning, as Abdul said, can hinder you for sure. However, you can use the same reasoning surrounding why having 2 bites of the cherry is a good thing. So if expected minutes is the best metric, then surely having double the chance your player taking the field is a better thing. Not to mention that you'll probably need a backup goalkeeper then, with a wasted 4.5 in your team, perhaps, although there is Foster right now who could fill that role going forward. I still think that logistically, I can see why we go for later bench boosts, just because you can do that wild card the week before or a couple of weeks before and plan that around, and it's a lot more sort of set in stone. But I guess right now there's a lot more sort of predictability about lineups outside of the usual stuff surrounding COVID or general rotation. And I guess you can steal a march on your competitors in the murky waters. Steal a march on your competitors now versus later on in the murky waters of later in the campaign. But it is definitely a chip where I've certainly seen people say, I'm glad to get it out of the way, similar to wildcard, because it is a huge impediment on your planning, isn't it, Abdul? It's one of those where, you've got to basically, your transfers are all centered around a 1 week sort of boost where you're hoping everything goes right. So it might be nice to not have that sort of thing hanging over you and just basically get out of the way and do it. So I completely can see where Anthony's coming from there.
And I think as well, it's hard to. I mean, I think it's impossible to actually, say which way. I don't think there's a right way. I don't think there's enough evidence, to state that what one way is better than the other. Because when you're planning for that bench boost, the only way to really tell is, if you kind of manually, work out which transfers you would have made if you weren't going to go that way, etc., etc. So. Yeah, and the chips have only been around for I think it was 4 seasons now.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's still early days and kind of determining which is the actual optimal way to play it.
Yeah, maybe to bring us off onto the end of this particular segment, I would say if I was to pick up the two, I would probably look to Gameweek 11, purely because Brentford are home to Norwich. You'd feel like that could be a good game for your 1 or 2 Brentford players, either attacking or defensive. You could even triple up on them, given that particular fixture. Palace play Wolves, which I kind of feel like could be a good fixture for assets on either side of that fixture. And it's just like if you're gambling on someone from either side, I feel like you might get some success. Brighton face Newcastle. I feel like it's defensively, especially, you'd have a Brighton player, and there could be something out of that. Arsenal are at home to Watford. That again could prove fruitful. And Leeds play Leicester. Probably Leeds attacking player you'll have. Leicester haven't been great defensively, but someone like Rafinha could mop up against them. So I just feel like there's some pretty good chances there. And it actually doesn't seem like a bad idea to me to use that bench boost now, to be perfectly honest with you, especially if you're wildcarding into it.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think Brighton and Arsenal have a really good rotation as well.
Yeah, I think you're correct in saying that. Yeah, I've seen that somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I know they had a really good rotation up until Gameweek 20, around about Gameweek 20, but not because that's when I planned in my Duffy and White rotation, but I'm not sure further than that. But I'm pretty sure they have a good rotation all the way throughout the season.
Yeah, I feel like that's one that I've been hearing about. I'm actually loading up one of the fixture rotators. Do you know what? So I'm just going to do it. Yeah, so I've just brought up one of the fixture planners here on Fantasy Football Fix, and like that looks like a really decent rotation, kind of going through from Gameweek 8, as you say, right through up to Gameweek 19 anyway, is what this particular one that I've set up goes on to. Not necessarily in terms of getting lots of good home fixtures, but there is plenty of good fixtures in there against weaker teams right the way through that would probably be pretty promising. So yeah, not a bad rotation to have. And of course, that would be your 2 goalkeepers. Pretty easily sorted for pretty cheap. Anyway, thanks so much to Anthony for emailing into whogottheassist@gmail.com. Correspondence, please send it in. We would appreciate whatever you might have, questions, thoughts, addendums, songs, poetry, all of the rest. Please get it in. whogottheassist@gmail.com.
Yeah, definitely do. Right, let's move on to listener questions. A bit of a truncated this week just because we've had a lot to speak about in the main section. But the first thing is all about the Pep Roulette. So we foreshadowed this actually a few weeks back. Sean McCall in the correspondence asked us about how we're going to be dealing with the Pep Roulette this year. It's a game week, episode 7. So 3 episodes ago now. But there's so many questions on the Pep Roulette. Danny, Stevie Dalglish, and Stoyanov FPL all asked questions about various aspects, from Cancelo to Stevie, Gabriel Jesus to Stoyanov, and Danny asked about all the attackers. Where are we going with those? And Benny Blanco piped up to ask a question in DM about Edison. We've already covered him, of course, and basically if a double, even triple up on City defense is worth it. And I was speaking to Nick Maynard as well before we came on, who asked me basically about KDB as well. So how are we going to navigate this? I mean, Abdul taking one aspect of this, the Benny Blanco question first, in terms of those sort of defensive double ups, and you got 2 of them. I mean, with Cancelo, with Diaz, it's all about upside, isn't it? And if both of those play, the 0 out of 2 potential is fairly low, isn't it? And I guess that's kind of where you're going, just trying to hope that those players who are the most nailed in the Pep system are going to be giving you dividends over a decent set of fixtures.
Yeah, I think we've touched on this earlier with the premium goalkeeper. I just don't see it kind of being value. I mean, I think Edison probably is the best premium goalkeeper, but going Edison over Diaz, I don't think it's going to be worth it over the long run.
Mm-hmm.
personally. I mean, could be wrong.
Yeah, maybe bringing us on. I feel like we've talked an awful lot about that City defense and stuff. So maybe Benny's question has been dealt with between you just there and earlier in the pod. So looking maybe to those midfield questions, it's really bloody hard to pick a City attacker. It's just as simple as that. And so like, whilst you might be tempted by Grealish, who does continue to get in good positions, has to reach the 60-minute mark in every game so far.
Most
he has just 2 returns.
And so, again.
It's all there. I know. It's good. It's very good. And if you look at XG per minute, then Ferran Torres is right up there. The problem is that we've now gone 3 weeks without him making an appearance, which I think typifies just how difficult Pep Roulette is. I said it last week. I think they need to play him. But they didn't do it this week. Will they play him against weaker sides? I've seen some people saying, "Oh, it's actually against weaker teams is where City actually do play this, false nine striker setup thing where Torres gets a chance." Great, if he does. Tom, did you do that? Sorry.
Yeah, your video first.
It came up. Okay, sorry. So with that in mind, Torres will be attempting to pick, but I really can't recommend Torres when he hasn't played for 3 weeks in a row, much as I might want to. And then looking at the rest, I think it's a bit of a crapshoot in terms of trying to pick one of them, and especially when you look at De Bruyne, it's just too much. It's just too much.
Yeah, it's just too.
There's far too many other options out there. I think you'd be far better off. Yeah, you'd be far better off going for someone like Son if you wanted to kind of extend off into the near premium bracket, but still save yourself about 2 million along the way.
I still think having the double in this period is going to be worth doing. Torres has stayed in my team. I did not sell him. It wasn't just Anthony calling me rash. I think it was just that I kind of.
It would be so rash to sell him now, Tom.
I had Dennis back me up in that time frame. And I spoke to my friend Karam Tizer about this, and he said, "But the next 3 games are the games where City are likely to play number 9 as centre forward." So I'm fine there with Torres at 6.9. Is he going to play against Burnley? Well, that's what I'm hoping for. If that doesn't happen, am I in the mud? Yes. I am. So I'm probably going to have to get rid of him then. And he's kind of think, you know what? All right, I've definitely given that sense of patience with him. Anthony said he's not played the last 2 games, but fair enough. I mean, those are not games I wanted him for. I've also bought Cancelo already, just because I caught the rise on him. Maybe a lot of people have. He's definitely been performing fairly well. As I spoke about earlier on, Portugal play Qatar and Ireland's conquerors Luxembourg in that international break. So I'm hoping that will be okay and there won't be any adverse effects. But the reality is, it's all about risk appetite as always. I can see it's interesting these players, and that's 3 games are worth buying into, really, if you're looking at Man City, even from an FPL point of view, in terms of Burnley, Brighton and Crystal Palace. Like Burnley regularly every season donate 3 points to Man City at home. The Brighton game could be difficult. The unstoppable force meets the unstoppable force, and the Crystal Palace at home in Gameweek 10. But nonetheless, I think that definitely going with the fixtures is worth doing. Kevin De Bruyne is a little bit too expensive. Jesus, I think we answered the question about from FPL Claret on him a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, Anthony? And said, I'm not too sure about that. But he's had the most pen box entries only 4. He's been doing okay recently, obviously with the goal a couple of weeks ago against Chelsea, the deciding goal. For the price, he could be worth mentioning. I mean, Abdul, have you even looked at him for your wild cards in that kind of forward slot? I know you've got Antonio, I know you've got Tony, but as a short-term pick, has he not entered your thoughts?
No, not at all. I mean, I think obviously he's done well, but he's like in a reversal OOP. Like, he's a forward playing as a winger.
He's poo.
Yeah, he's poo. Yeah, and I mean he's had. I'm just looking at it now. He's had 2 double-digit turns, but I mean, he'll probably get more assists than goals, playing the position he's in. So, again, you need to look at the other value options, in the same category. And he doesn't make the cut, not anywhere near it, I don't think. And you'd probably rather go with a Foden or a Grealish, than
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a much higher ceiling there when you've got those guys who
Yeah.
can get an extra point for their goals and more likely to get into the bonus points and more creative as well in the case of Grealish and Foden too, to be honest.
Fair enough. I mean, is it worth using a transfer on a City attacker this week? I know, Abdul, you're on wildcards and you've eschewed them, but is that one where if you weren't a wildcard, you'd be looking to do, or would you be focusing your transfers like I have? I bought in Cancelo for Brandon Williams, spoiler for in a minute. Would that be your main focus this week?
Yeah, I think the defense definitely be the main focus, but I wouldn't be kind of, opposed to a move for like Grealish or Foden. I think they're potentially good options. And just actually going back to Benny's question, I just noticed he's asked, whether considering Ederson along with Diaz and Cancelo, which I thought he said, Ederson, Ederson and one of them. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't go for a triple up in defence, just because, as I just mentioned, with Grealish and Foden, if they become options, which they could well do, with the fixtures they've got coming up, then you're kind of left stranded a bit. But yeah, in terms of City attackers, I think Foden and Grealish are up there for me. And again, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing in them two guys in.
Oh, Ferran Torres. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, I'm sure.
I think I'll pass on that.
6.9. Come on. If he's number 9 for the next 3 games, that's going to be great.
Soon, 6.8.
Then he's a good option, I think.
Yeah. Differential by mistake, as I used to call it. All right. Next questions. Actually, no, we've answered these already. FPL Panorama, Ryan FPL about Vardy party and also about Son. Yeah, fine, done. The final question, keeping it short this week, but quite a meaty one actually, is Threemium Rip. So we spoke about the Threemium, spoke about the Duomium. The Union, is that going to be where we go moving forward? So Jono Forwards, a friend of the pod, spoken to him for many years now, wrote in and said, one mainly for FPL Stag, who's on the Threemium strategy, comme moi. How long is he going to give it? I'm looking for one more week before I bin Ronaldo / Lukaku and spread the wealth. And at Crouch Ender said, question for the pod. Goodbye, Threemium. Hello, Union. Is perma-captaining Salah, ditching the pricey forwards and hoovering up premium defenders a legitimate approach? Or is that recency bias in spades, given the fact that, Ronaldo, Lukaku and Salah had that 1 week where everything went off, everything was hunky-dory for the Threemium, but only really Salah has kept it up in the recent period. Anthony, it's all directed at you. What's your views?
This is really difficult because it kind of goes to the heart of my own side right now and everything that I'm kind of questioning about my own side. Maybe first dealing with Akrokender's question, which was kind of, possibly goodbye Threemium and possible
Crouch Ender. It's Crouch End in London, I think is what he's referring to.
A Crouch Ender. Understood. Right. A Crouch Ender. Coming to his question first, he's asking about goodbye Threemium and hello, potentially a Unium. Is it recency bias in spades? I don't think so. Purely because the fact of the matter is that what we've been saying consistently and has proven true so far this season is that the City defense and the Chelsea defense offer you a clean sheet every second game. And right now we have found that the premium strikers are barely, if even, matching them in terms of on a points per game basis, or certainly in terms of the how much more they cost. They're definitely, on a value basis, justifying their place more than the premium strikers are. Especially Lukaku. Now he's gone through the hard fixtures. The good run is coming. So with that in mind, I don't think it's worth getting rid of him now. I don't think, certainly going down to a Unium seems a really rash thing to do, given what Chelsea have coming up ahead of them. Salah, of course, yeah. And then I totally understand why people are considering selling Ronaldo. United's fixture run is over. I too, moving to John Forward's question, will be considering getting rid of my Threemium after the coming game week. I would fancy Ronaldo after the international break. If he's managed to survive playing against Luxembourg, who are a titan of world football, if he manages to get through that particular game all okay, I suspect he'll be in fine fettle to play Leicester away. Leicester haven't been great defensively, and I would fancy him to just be inevitable and find a way to score. And also just kind of, I guess, post-international break, there always tends to be a few surprises with selections and injuries and things, and this just kind of not necessarily moving him on that week. Just kind of, it's a good, but it's Ronaldo safe bet that he's in my side. He'll probably do okay, and it kind of tides me over for another week. But I would be, as a matter of urgency, seeking to get into the City defense, something which I haven't been in right now because of the Threemium for that Burnley game. And a bit like Tom, it's Cancelo's the one, and this is what we've been discussing. Cancelo's probably the one that I'd be looking to get in, but I might end up being forced to go for a cheaper option and taking a hit in order to facilitate it. Before that, it'd be Benrahma, who would be likely the one that I'd be selling to do that. So overall, the Threemium, I think it's really, really at risk. If the Threemium has a really, really good game week in Game Week 8, watch me flick to the other side of this argument again. But as it stands right now, I think the time is coming to ditch the Threemium, go back to the Duomium, and be ready to potentially run back to the Threemium when Ronaldo inevitably starts to fire again at some point in the season. United's fixtures really turn around in Game Week 15, for example, and could see us trying to angle our way back to him for Ronaldo Christmas special.
We've been banging on about this for a while, haven't we, in terms of the aggressive premium strategy, and you're completely right. As I said last week, it's completely valid to solve Ronaldo. I would say that because I've sold Ronaldo, but I think it probably is valid to solve Ronaldo this week or maybe next week, because he does face Liverpool, Man City and Chelsea in the next 5 game weeks. Abdul, obviously you've gone with Lukaku, you've gone with Salah. You can't go without Salah because he's in your app. I mean, I remember there was one year you did sell him. You brought in Mane, didn't you? And there was definitely opprobrium from some members of the FPL community, i.e. me. But I mean, you can't go without him, can you? So, I mean, it's definitely all about the Duomium, whatever it is for you. Spreading that wealth does seem to be the way. I mean, do you have a plan to bring in Ronaldo eventually, or is that kind of a future Abdul is going to be dealing with that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're just kind of looking at it now, I think Game Week 14 onwards, it's probably when you look to bring Ronaldo back in. Again, I think you just have to. I mean, I think looking at his performances over this tough fixture, these tough fixtures is gonna, kind of tell us a lot about what he's really kind of made of at the moment. Whether he's gonna be worth it over Lukaku. But yeah, I think at the moment, I mean, if you were to ask me, I'd probably say I wouldn't be getting him back in 14. But I mean, if he scores well over, like this, like the tough fixture run, then yeah, he could well be coming back in Game Week 14.
No, definitely. I think that's probably the time to do it. But it definitely sounds like Salah plus one of the Ronkaku duo. At the moment, it is Lukaku as the way going forward, and it's really interesting to hear that you've decided to. Well, you're not sure what you're going to do going forward, at least, Anthony. And I guess we can move forward now into captains and transfers, and we'll get on to you in a second, Anthony. But obviously, Abdul, at this point, the team that you mentioned earlier on is as how it is, and I guess that you're looking at kind of Trent's fitness being the key.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about Trent. I mean, if he's out for Watford, then I can, as I said, I can wait until Game Week 10 or even possibly Game Week 13 to bring him back in, and I can capitalise on City's fixtures and on Son's good fixtures as well. So yeah, this is at the moment, but yeah, if Trent does end up being fit, then I think it'd have to be goodbye to Son. And I think this week, without a doubt, the captains can, whatever happens, the captaincy is going to be on Mo Salah.
Do you think this is one of those seasons that he looks proper up for it, doesn't he? I mean, he basically said at the start of the season, yeah, you should probably have me in your team. I'll definitely score for you. And given how it's gone this year, I mean, I'm not sure it's going to be a 303, but at the end of the day, last 4 seasons, he's done ridiculously well. I mean, this last couple of seasons, he's only kind of hit the 230s. Do you think this year is the season AFCON may end up impeding that as well? But are we in a keep calm and captain Salah sort of environment, do you think?
I mean, he's looking that way. He seems like he's on a different level. I mean, I seen a post by Andrew Gower on Twitter saying that the amount of points he's got now is the quickest. How many points has he got at the moment? He's got
70.
70, and that's the quickest he's reached 70 points. Since he's been in the Premier League. So even quicker than his 30 goal season in 2017-18. So it could well be. I mean, at the moment he's going to be my perma captain going forward. So.
Yeah, maybe give us Lukaku versus Norwich in game week 9, but it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I really like this team, and we'll see obviously how it changes going forward. But I really like it. As mentioned earlier on, maybe swap Basuma for Douglas Luiz or Alan if you've listened to
Clearly didn't do enough research.
All right, let's move on to Mr. Anthony. How is your team looking?
It just depends how I feel about the Threemium on a given day. But right now, looking at the fixtures, the team is quite well sorted. So I'd have Sanchez and goal, Norwich away. That's fine. I'm surviving with that one goalkeeper setup still. My backline at the moment has Rudiger with Brentford away, Cody with Villa away, White with Palace at home, Livramento with Leeds at home. Now, I'd like to add a City defender to this. If I'm to get a City defender in, I'm going to need to finance it with a move out of midfield, and I'm going to have to take a hit in the process as well. It would be Benrahma who would make place. He's currently on my bench, along with Alan. The three midfielders that are starting are Rafinha, Salah, who's captain, and Saka, who has Palace at home. Then I have 3 strikers up front, obviously, to complete the 4-3-3. That is the Ronaldo, Lukaku, and Antonio setup right now. Who would move if I was to try and move up to a City defender? Maybe it depends on if something happens in the international break. But I'd be very tempted to just move on Ayling, to be honest. He's about the same cost as basically all the rest of my defenders. And he's been the one who's kind of proven to be a dead weight since I got him. So he'd be the one who I'd be looking to upgrade up. Benrahma go down, and I might end up joining the Mbeumo party just after it has begun. Because he's just a very cheap enabler in that midfield. I really do feel like I'm weakening my squad in so many different ways to enable this Threemium, and it's starting to drive me nuts now that it isn't kind of performing as I would have hoped it would. I kind of need 2 out of the 3 of them to fire every week, and every week that only one of them does, and I don't happen to captain that one, I just really feel like I'm getting burnt. And I do feel like we are moving towards a point where, as you've just been discussing with Abdul, we're moving towards a perma-captain Salah world. Even in game week 9, to be perfectly honest with you, away to Man United, United at Old Trafford.
It's quite tough to do, isn't it?
I know, but it's quite tough to do. But the fact of the matter is that
this week you can't Ronaldo Salah versus Man City. I mean,
exactly. That's what I was about to say. Is that we've just had Salah versus Man City, and we've seen what he can do. We've also seen that United's defense are in disarray. They seem to be particularly poor at home. So all of these kind of factors kind of seem to push towards the fact that Salah being captain in that particular game, it doesn't even seem mad. So perma captain it may well be. But I do think, as I was saying in the listener questions, I think the Threemium survives another week unless some sort of injury means that I feel the need to move on.
Fair play. All right. So I've already made a transfer. I've already sold Brandon Williams for João Cancelo, a like-for-like transfer. No, a fairly decent upgrade, I think, there. So in goal, I've got Jed Steer this week, and luckily, I'm hoping that I've got him or Guaita. Who knows? Goalkeeper. God, I hate it. I hate Guaita. I hate Steer. Wish I'd just done Edison last week, as I mentioned, but whatever it is. At the back, I'm hoping that Trent plays, but if not, I get Cody off the bench away at Aston Villa. I've got Christensen and Aspilicueta as the 2 Chelsea defenders. Chelsea double at the back. Cancelo in midfield. I've got Rafinha, Benrahma. I think that might be one of those. I'm looking at Benrahma a lot over the next kind of 4-week block and thinking, is this the time I get rid of Benrahma? Probably might be. Salah, obvious captain, and Ferran Torres, differential by mistake. Antonio and Lukaku, and Dennis and Mbeumo. basically on the bench, acting as a hashtag deep bench pick. But let's see how it goes over national break. I'm hoping that I can do something with all of this. I probably am going to kind of subscribe to Abdul's idea of Alexander Arnold being a bit of a glue pick. I don't know if I'm going to be selling him because I think that I'm going to basically have a hanging over me unless there's a proper long-term, 3 or 4 week absence where I can deal with that money. I'm going to kind of view him as a sunk cost and leave him there, move it all around him. I've got Mbuemo, I've got Cody, who can both do a job around him. So let's kind of see how that goes. But I'm fairly happy with it, apart from my goalkeeper. I hate Guaita. God, why did I do that? Anthony, you should have told me to just buy Sanchez. I what you did. I should have done something else. But yeah, it is what it is. I like the team going forward in the 4-4-2 effectively. Right. I think that probably is all of the pod this week, isn't it, Anthony?
Yeah, it is. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening. We were Who Got the Assist. We would really appreciate if you leave a 5-star review if you've liked what you heard tonight or in many of the other pods that we've done this season and before. If you'd like to watch this pod rather than listen to this pod, you can go onto YouTube and find us there. Just search WGTA or Who Got the Assist for that matter, and you will find us. And there's a few hundred people now watching every week, and that's lovely. It's a slightly unedited. It is an unedited version. There's no slightly about it.
Completely.
But that allows you to see how human we really are, because it's such a surprise it is to you. With our unbelievable returns week in, week out. Correspondence, by the way, who got the assist at gmail.com if you want to send that through. If you want to join our mini league, 2IP43T. Thanks so much, Abdul, for joining us. FPL_Salah on Twitter. It was great to have you.
It's good to be here, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Abdul.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks Abdul. Really good to have you on. We hope to see you thinking about your future transfer targets. Hopefully everyone wildcarding has an amazing game week 8, and those who aren't wildcarding have an even better game week 8. Sorry, Abdul. Really good to be on again. Be back after game week 8 to discuss hopefully not the wreckage of that. Hopefully we're all done really, really well, back on target. But nonetheless, hostess Stu, have a really nice international break. Speak to you very, very soon. Goodbye.
Azerbaijan away and Qatar at home in a friendly. It's so sweet, isn't it? I love IBs.
Good time to end.